It was bitter cold, the kind of cold that sinks deep into your bones and makes you question your sanity. I'd been sitting on that frozen lake since dawn, drilling holes, waiting for something, anything to bite. Fishing was my way to escape reality, at least for a while. But this morning felt different. I was just about to pack up when I saw something strange beneath the ice. A dark shadow moved beneath the surface. At first, I figured it was a trick of the light, my mind playing games after hours of solitude. But then it moved again, frantic, struggling. What the hell? I dropped to my knees, my face pressed against the ice. Underneath, trapped beneath the thick, transparent barrier, was a wolf. Its fur floated like ghostly shadows around its desperate, wild eyes. I swear, those eyes were staring straight into my soul, pleading for help. My heart slammed in my chest. Logic told me to walk away. Wolves weren't pets. They were dangerous predators. But something deeper pushed me forward. Without thinking, I grabbed my hatchet and began hacking at the ice. Each strike sent shocks up my arms, the ice stubborn and unforgiving. My breath formed white clouds in the freezing air, adrenaline numbing my pain and cold. I struck harder, desperate, as the wolf's movements grew weaker beneath the ice. "Come on! Don't you dare give up!" I shouted, not sure if I was talking to myself or the wolf. Finally, the ice cracked, splintering apart with a violent snap. My hand plunged into the icy water, grasping fur and muscle. Teeth bared in fear, the wolf struggled against me, but exhaustion made it weak. Summoning all my strength, I hauled it from its watery grave, gasping as the freezing water soaked through my clothes. For one brief moment we were eye to eye, man and beast. The wolf's yellow eyes burned into mine, a silent exchange passing between us. Gratitude? Understanding? Or was it a warning? Then, with a sudden burst of strength, the wolf wrenched itself from my grasp, shaking violently, sending shards of ice flying. Without looking back, it bolted across the lake toward the dark line of trees, vanishing like a phantom. I stood there, trembling, heart pounding, wondering what the hell I'd just done. My life had always been predictable, safe. But standing alone on that empty, frozen lake, watching the wolf disappear, I knew, deep in my gut, nothing would ever be the same again. After that day on the ice, I tried to convince myself everything was normal. For a while, life was quiet again. But soon, things started changing around my farm. Slowly at first, then faster, escalating into something I couldn't ignore. One cold morning, I walked out to feed the chickens and felt my stomach drop. The coop door was open, feathers scattered across the snow like dark stains. My best hens, gone without a trace. My hands clenched into fists, and a chill went down my spine. My neighbor, Jack, came over later that day. He always had opinions, loud ones, and today he wasn't holding back. "It's wolves, I'm tellin' ya," Jack growled, eyes sharp and suspicious. "Been hearin' 'em howling at night. They're back, and they're hungry." "You sure?" I tried to hide my unease, but my voice cracked. "Damn sure," Jack said, his eyes narrowing. "And we ain't just gonna sit and wait until someone's kid gets taken. The boys and I are going hunting tonight. You should come along." His words twisted inside my gut. Hunting wolves wasn't unusual around here, but this time it felt personal, like a challenge aimed directly at me. That evening, as darkness crept in, trucks pulled into my driveway, engines growling like angry beasts. Men I'd known my whole life stepped out, rifles slung over shoulders, faces grim. I stood there awkwardly, feeling their suspicion. "You comin'?" Jack asked, staring hard into my eyes. "No," I answered, voice low and unsteady. "I gotta watch the farm." They drove off, headlights piercing the night. As their taillights disappeared, a deep ache filled me. Guilt gnawed at me like a disease. Why was I feeling responsible? I paced the farm nervously, flashlight in hand, checking every lock, every gate. Each sound made my heart jump. Every creak, every whisper of the wind became threatening. In the morning, the hunters returned empty-handed, frustrated and angry. Jack stormed over, his anger radiating from every step. "They're out there," he snapped, stabbing a finger towards the distant woods. "And someone's gonna pay the price." As he walked away, my eyes drifted toward the tree-line, my chest tightening. I knew wolves weren't thieves, they didn't break into locked coops. But who else could it be? And why couldn't I shake this damn feeling that it was all somehow my fault? The tension around town grew heavier each passing day. Nights became sleepless, filled with howls in the distance, real or imagined. I couldn't even tell anymore. It felt like everyone was watching me, blaming me somehow. Then, early one morning, as the pale winter sun crept over the horizon, I stepped outside and froze. There, curled up against my barn door, lay a wolf, its fur matted and darkened with blood. It barely moved as I approached. My heart hammered as recognition flashed through me. It was the wolf I'd saved from the ice. "Damn it!" I whispered, kneeling slowly. His breathing was ragged, labored. A bullet wound marked its flank, angry and infected. My hand shook as I reached out, hesitant, but determined. The wolf growled weakly, eyes narrowing, but didn't snap at me. "It's okay," I muttered softly, as if it could understand. Carefully, I lifted the animal and carried it inside the barn, setting it down gently on a bed of straw. The wolf lay quietly, watching me warily. Trust was fragile, uncertain, but it was there. For days I worked secretly, cleaning the wound, applying salves, keeping the wolf hidden from prying eyes. I lived in constant fear someone might discover what I was doing. Each knock at my door sent panic racing through me. I knew this choice would cost me dearly if anyone found out. One night, footsteps crunched outside, heavy and deliberate. My chest tightened as the barn door swung open, revealing Jack, shotgun slung across his shoulder, eyes burning with suspicion. "Heard you've been acting strange," Jack growled, scanning the shadows. "Just busy," I replied, fighting to keep my voice steady. Jack stepped forward, his gaze sharp, penetrating. Then he spotted the wolf, eyes blazing with fury. "You've lost your damn mind," Jack shouted, aiming his shotgun. I instinctively stepped between him and the wounded animal. "It's hurt, Jack," I pleaded. "Let me handle this." "Handle it?" Jack spat angrily. "You think it's your damn pet now? It's a killer. I can't let you do this," I said, standing firm, my heart pounding painfully. Our friendship had survived years of hardship, but this felt different. Lines were drawn now, unspoken boundaries crossed. Jack glared, then slowly lowered his gun, shaking his head in disgust. "You're making a mistake," he said bitterly. "And next time I won't hesitate." As Jack vanished into the darkness, dread filled me. The wolf whimpered softly, unaware of the chaos its presence had unleashed. But I knew exactly how high the stakes had become. It didn't take long for whispers to become shouts. Soon, the entire village knew about the wolf I'd sheltered. My secret was out, and with it went any shred of normalcy I'd managed to hold onto. Overnight, I became an outcast. People I'd known since childhood crossed the street to avoid me. Conversations hushed when I walked by, replaced by judgmental stares and pointed silence. Even at the grocery store, Mrs. Thompson, who had always greeted me warmly, handed me my change without so much as a glance. It hurt more than I thought possible. "Why would you protect a killer?" my sister asked one evening, eyes filled with disappointment. "You've disgraced our family." Her words cut deeper than any others. Family had always been my anchor, my safe place. But now even they turned their backs, leaving me isolated in my own home. I poured all my energy into caring for the wolf, who grew stronger each day. The infection subsided, the wound healed, and soon it could stand and move without pain. But its recovery only heightened my anxiety. The healthier it got, the more urgent my fears became. Eventually, I'd have to let it go. But could I risk it? One evening, as I sat quietly in the barn, the wolf lifted its head, ears twitching. I froze, sensing trouble even before I heard the shouts from outside. Peeking through the barn window, I saw a group of villagers gathering, Jack among them, their faces hard and unforgiving. "Come out," Jack shouted, anger in every syllable. "You owe us an explanation." I stepped out slowly, pulse hammering, trying to look braver than I felt. The villagers stared at me, their expressions mixed: anger, betrayal, fear. "You chose an animal over your own people," Jack accused, voice shaking with barely contained rage. "You're a traitor, plain and simple." I met their gaze, knowing no words could change their minds. Standing there alone, surrounded by hostility, I finally understood the price of compassion. The wolf shifted restlessly inside the barn, sensing danger, mirroring my own desperation. Every second felt like an eternity as I stood silently, caught between loyalty and conviction, waiting for the storm to break. Under the crushing weight of everyone's anger, I knew I couldn't keep the wolf any longer. With a heavy heart, I prepared to let it go. That morning felt like the coldest yet, the silence heavier than ever. I carefully led the wolf, now strong and healthy, into the back of my truck. Its eyes were calm but wary, sensing change. Driving deep into the forest, miles from the village, my heart twisted with guilt. The wolf watched me, quiet, as though understanding the sacrifice. Finally, I stopped, stepping into the snow-covered clearing. The world felt empty, isolated, matching the loneliness in my chest. "You're free now," I whispered, opening the cage door. The wolf hesitated, looking directly at me for a long, haunting moment. Then, with quiet dignity, it stepped out, briefly brushed past my leg, and disappeared silently into the trees. I stood, numb, as the forest swallowed it whole. Days passed painfully slow. I stayed inside, avoiding neighbors, living in quiet grief until a frantic pounding at my door shattered the silence. Opening it, I faced Jack and two others, their faces grim, eyes burning with rage. "Hunter's boy is dead," Jack hissed, fists clenched tight. "Found him mauled out in the woods. Your wolf did this." My knees nearly buckled. "You can't be sure." "We warned you," Jack shouted, stepping closer. "This blood's on your hands." The villagers' anger surged, a dark wave crashing over me. Blame seeped through their stares, heavy and unrelenting. I felt trapped, suffocated by their hatred and my own mounting doubt. Alone again, I sank into despair. Had my actions truly led to someone's death? My conscience screamed against it, but doubt tore at me, merciless and unending. Outside, whispers grew louder. I became not just an outcast, but the villain of their darkest fears. My home, once a haven, now felt like a prison. Each accusation chipped away another piece of my sanity, leaving me stranded in a storm I could no longer control. And as darkness descended, I stared into the trees, haunted by unanswered questions, wondering if my compassion had truly turned deadly, and if I was now the monster they claimed. Days blurred into sleepless nights, rumors twisted into accusations, and soon the police were knocking at my door. Their questions came sharp, relentless, making me feel more trapped than ever. "Where were you the night the boy was killed?" the officer asked, suspicion heavy in his tone. "At home," I replied, voice weary from endless repetition. "I didn't hurt anyone." The officer eyed me skeptically, noting something in his notebook. "We'll be watching you," he warned coldly before leaving. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, a car unfamiliar to our village rolled slowly into town. A woman stepped out, confident, poised, clearly from the city. It didn't take long for her to find me. "My name's Emma Reed," she announced, extending her hand. "I'm a journalist, here to get to the truth." Her eyes were sharp, inquisitive, searching my face for clues. "I believe there's more to this story," she continued softly. "Maybe you're not the villain they say you are. Or maybe you're here to make things worse," I countered cautiously. Emma smiled faintly. "Truth isn't always comfortable, but it matters." Over the next few days, Emma seemed everywhere, talking to neighbors, digging into details, stirring up secrets. Each conversation she had left the villagers more suspicious, their resentment toward me growing deeper. Was she helping me or using me? One evening, Emma came to my door again, expression grave. I found something, she whispered urgently. But I need you to trust me. Trust felt impossible now, every relationship tainted with doubt. Yet, looking into her eyes, I saw sincerity mixed with something else, something hidden. My gut twisted, uncertain. Could she really help me, or would trusting her be the biggest mistake yet? Early the next morning, Emma and I set out for the woods, the silence between us tense and thick. We moved quietly, the snow crunching softly beneath our boots, each step drawing us deeper into uncertainty. Why are you risking this much for a wild animal? Emma finally asked, breaking the uneasy quiet. Because I'm responsible, I replied simply, eyes fixed on the trees ahead. Responsible? She scoffed gently. It's a wolf. Wild, unpredictable. You can't control nature. It's not about control, I snapped, frustration rising. It's about doing the right thing. Nature didn't create this mess. I did. Emma paused, studying my face carefully. Sometimes doing what's right isn't so clear. What if protecting one life endangers others? Where's the line? Her words gnawed at my conscience, but I pressed onward, refusing to admit my doubts aloud. Suddenly, Emma halted, grabbing my arm sharply. Ahead, movement flickered between the trees, silent shadows circling cautiously. My breath caught sharply. Wolves. They emerged from the shadows, eyes gleaming yellow in the muted daylight. My heart hammered violently against my ribs. Emma stood frozen beside me, her earlier confidence vanished. We were exposed, vulnerable. Don't move, I whispered urgently, watching as the largest wolf stepped forward. His gaze was piercing, intelligent, strangely familiar. My breath trembled as recognition slammed into me. My wolf, strong and commanding, leading the pack. For a long, tense moment, no one moved. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath. The wolf stared directly into my eyes, silently measuring something beyond understanding. Then, just as suddenly, the wolf turned away, leading its pack silently into the darkness. Emma exhaled shakily, eyes wide. Maybe, she murmured softly, there's more to this than either of us understands. I stood there silently, shaken, wondering if my quest for truth had only just begun. The wolves melted into the forest as silently as they'd appeared, leaving us stunned and breathless. My mind raced, still processing the realization. The wolf I'd saved now led the pack. But the relief didn't last long. Beside me, Emma stumbled, collapsing suddenly with a sharp cry. Emma! I rushed over, dropping to her side. Her ankle was twisted badly, already swelling beneath her boot. I'm fine, she insisted through gritted teeth, trying and failing to stand. You're clearly not, I countered firmly. Come on, I'll carry you. Reluctantly, she allowed me to lift her onto my back. The journey home was painfully slow, each step weighed down by exhaustion and tension. I'm sorry, Emma murmured softly against my shoulder. About everything. I felt a chill run through me, sensing hidden meanings. What do you mean, everything? She hesitated, finally sighing deeply. I'm not writing about protecting wildlife or proving your innocence. My story is about human irresponsibility, how good intentions can lead to tragedy. My steps faltered slightly, anger and disappointment swirling inside me. So, you think I'm irresponsible? I think you're human, Emma replied quietly. We all want to do good, but sometimes it backfires. Her words stung, carving deeper into my doubts. Had I truly misunderstood my actions all along? The weight of her revelation made each step harder, every breath heavier. But seeing that wolf, how it protected you, Emma continued softly, voice tinged with uncertainty. Maybe the story isn't so simple after all. I didn't answer, emotions tangled beyond expression. By the time we reached the village, darkness had fallen, both around us and within me. As villagers gathered suspiciously, whispering amongst themselves, I realized that trust, once broken, was harder to mend than any physical wound. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, the nightmare deepened. Villagers who once ignored me now openly showed hostility. Their anger became tangible, dangerous, simmering beneath thinly veiled civility. One night, as I lay sleepless in bed, smoke filled my lungs, sharp and choking. Panic surged as I realized the truth. My house was burning. Flames roared from downstairs, devouring everything I'd ever known. Coughing violently, I stumbled outside, collapsing onto frozen ground as my home blazed furiously against the night sky. Neighbors stood around silently, watching the fire with cold detachment. Nobody moved to help. Jack stood among them, eyes reflecting the dancing flames. "Serves you right," he murmured, his voice harsh with satisfaction. I stared at him in disbelief, the betrayal cutting deeper than ever. This wasn't just anger, it was hatred. My life, my memories, everything burned away, leaving nothing but bitter ashes. The following days were a blur. I wandered numbly through charred remains, salvaging almost nothing. Emma visited briefly, her face heavy with guilt. "I'm sorry," she whispered, eyes downcast. "It's not your fault," I replied quietly. "It's mine. I should have seen this coming." She shook her head slowly. "You tried to do the right thing. And look where it got me," I muttered bitterly, gesturing at the wreckage. That night, standing among the ruins, realization struck me brutally. Rescuing the wolf hadn't just changed my life. It had destroyed it. Compassion had made me a pariah. Kindness had cost me everything. Now, truly alone, I faced a harsh, inescapable truth. In the flickering shadows of my burned home, I finally understood. The moment I'd saved that wolf, I'd sealed my own fate. There was no turning back, and nothing could ever return to the way it was. With nothing left to hold me back, I walked away from the village that had once been home. Each step felt heavier than the last, weighed down by loss and regret. But deep inside, beneath the pain, was a quiet certainty. I had done the right thing. Life moved forward slowly. Years passed, and I built a quiet existence far from my past, choosing solitude over bitterness. Memories faded, but never completely disappeared. The wolf's eyes haunted my dreams, a constant reminder of choices made and consequences faced. Then, one cold winter day, fate intervened. Strolling through a distant town, miles from where it all began, I stopped abruptly at an unbelievable sight. Across the street stood a man whose face I'd never forget. Jack, older now, face softened by time, quietly watching something beside him. My heart jumped as I followed his gaze. Beside Jack stood a wolf, strong, calm, unmistakably the one I'd rescued. Its golden eyes met mine briefly, recognition clear, before turning back toward Jack with trust one never thought possible. Stunned, I watched as Jack placed a gentle hand on the wolf's head, the gesture filled with mutual respect and understanding. Anger and betrayal flared within me, quickly replaced by confusion. The world, which I'd believed simple and clear, suddenly felt incredibly complex. Jack finally saw me standing there. He froze momentarily, emotions flickering across his face. Surprise, guilt, gratitude. After a tense silence, he nodded slightly, a silent acknowledgement passing between us, carrying a weight words could never fully convey. Without speaking, they walked away together, vanishing into the crowd, leaving me standing alone, overwhelmed by questions. Had I truly understood anything? Was kindness ultimately rewarded, or was the price always too high? Walking away slowly, uncertainty filled every step. I'd sacrificed everything for compassion, and it cost me dearly. Yet, seeing Jack and the wolf together sparked a faint glimmer of hope. Maybe, after all, the answers were never meant to be easy. Maybe life's truths lay hidden somewhere between right and wrong, compassion and consequence. In the end, I realized we all lived in those fragile spaces, making choices we hoped would matter, even if we never fully understood the price.